As Democrats maneuver to pass voting rights legislation through Congress, some high-profile members of the party have expressed an openness to one GOP-backed policy they have long opposed: voter ID requirements. "We do not oppose voter ID," Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina, the third-ranking Democrat in the House, told NPR this month. "Every one of us who registered to vote gets a voter registration card. And you present that card every time you go to vote. That's a voter ID." The shift comes 13 years after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that if states wanted to require voters to show a photo ID to vote, they could. 11 states, many with state legislatures mostly controlled by the GOP, have strict voter ID laws, while an additional 24 have less stringent laws requesting an ID to vote, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Democrats fought those requirements tooth and nail, usually with limited results. While most Americans do have the sort of government-issued IDs that the strictest laws call for, the millions of Americans who don't are more likely to be eligible voters from marginalized groups. In Georgia, where a new law includes an ID requirement for vote-by-mail ballots that didn't exist before, more than half of the voters who may be affected are black, according to an Atlanta Journal-Constitution analysis. There's also no evidence of widespread election fraud that would require stricter security measures to be put in place. Between the impact on non-white voters and the absence of widespread voter fraud, Democrats have not been shy about describing voter ID laws as racist and disenfranchising. "We need to take our case directly to the American people and point out what this is all about," then Vice President Joe Biden said in 2014. "It's an attempt to repress minority voting masquerading as an attempt to end corruption." But after a decade of taking their case directly to the American people, it appears Democrats may be softening that stance because the American people don't seem to have budged. One reason for the change in tone about voter ID is the effort to craft legislation that could win approval from all 50 Senate Democrats, including key moderates such as Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. He has appeared open to ID requirements as long as things such as student IDs and utility bills are accepted. But so far, House Democrats have not included language mandating voter ID in either of the two significant voting bills it has passed. In fact, the For the People Act, which passed the House in a party line vote in March, reduces voter ID requirements. The partisan divide on IDs now appears to be over what type of IDs are acceptable. Republicans generally want a smaller range of government-issued IDs, while Democrats generally want less restrictive ID requirements. "I'm just not convinced the Democrats are even serious about debating any of the voter ID issues that many Republicans would support," said Rep.